All right, good afternoon, Oklahoma. This is Braxton with Oklahoma Weather, and I just want to give a quick update on severe weather potential coming to portions of the state as we go through tonight into tomorrow morning, followed by a second potential round of severe weather as we go into tomorrow afternoon and evening. So let's go ahead and take a quick look at the latest outlook from the Storm Prediction Center. This is for today. More so, this is for tonight into tomorrow morning. As you can see in the area highlighted in green, we have a marginal risk, a level 1 out of 5, which does include the Oklahoma Panhandle down through about the southern half of Oklahoma and into far eastern Oklahoma as well. In addition, we have a level 2 slight risk in the yellow. That includes much of northern Oklahoma toward northwest Oklahoma and a small portion of the Oklahoma Panhandle. The area in the slight risk is where we are most concerned about severe weather tonight into tomorrow morning. Hail, wind, and also an isolated tornado risk will be with any storms that develop through the overnight hours. So let's go through each of those threats. We're going to start off with the tornado threat. The latest outlook from the Storm Prediction Center has actually raised the probability of a tornado occurring across mainly northern Oklahoma into a portion of northeast Oklahoma. That is in the brown, which is a 5% tornado risk. Outside of that 5%, in the green is your 2% tornado risk, where there is the chance of a tornado, but it's not the area that we're most concerned about tornadic development. This is going to be a setup tonight to where it's more of a linear storm system, basically meaning these storms will be more so in a line rather than by themselves. So we would be looking at the potential of storms being more or tornadoes basically spinning up quicker, and would be one of kind of those spin up tornadoes that don't last very long, but also don't give much lead time in advance of them. So that is one thing we're going to be keeping a very close eye on. The other threats, damaging wind, again, pretty straightforward. The area in the brown is a 5% wind risk. The area in the yellow is a 15% wind risk. Basically, if you're in the marginal risk that I mentioned earlier, you're in the 5% wind risk. If you're in the slight risk, you are in that 15% wind risk. Again, linear storm mode, you're going to have a heightened threat for wind with these kinds of storms. And then, of course, the hail risk as well. The hail risk for tonight is going to be much more confined to northwest Oklahoma. That's mainly because we have, as these storms get going this evening and tonight, out across southwest and southern Kansas and into northwest Oklahoma, when they're more discrete by themselves, that will have the heightened hail risk. And I do want to also point out that little area in black there, highlighted with dashes, that is what we call a hatched risk. In this case, it indicates that there is going to be the potential for a few storms to try to produce more significantly sized hail, more basically 2 inches or greater in diameter. That doesn't mean everybody within that hatched area is going to see more significantly sized hail, but you should be aware of that possibility if you are in that area. The hail risk will decrease the more storms move south and east. So for Oklahoma City and Tulsa, your risk is pretty low for hail. More so, it's going to be a damaging wind risk. But of course, be aware there could be some hail through the overnight hours tonight. So that's round 1. The next thing I want to mention is round 2, the second round of storms that should come through tomorrow afternoon and evening. This threat is going to be more confined to eastern Oklahoma. As you can see, again, a marginal risk, level 1 out of 5 in the dark green, mainly for central Oklahoma and into far northern and northeast Oklahoma. But our main area of concern is going to be in that yellow, that slight risk area, which includes eastern Oklahoma down into southeast Oklahoma. This is going to depend a lot on what happens tonight into tomorrow morning. How many storms we get tonight, how long they last into tomorrow morning, that is going to be the main factor for how tomorrow afternoon and evening plays out. What I want to mention first is the tornado threat. The latest information we have from the Storm Prediction Center is that the heightened threat for tornadoes is going to be across eastern Oklahoma. There is the potential, depending on what happens tonight, that risk could go up even a little more as we go into tomorrow afternoon and evening compared to what happens tonight. So, as of right now, the risk is a 5% for eastern Oklahoma, mainly to the east and southeast of Tulsa. Tulsa is in that 2% tornado risk, which includes basically the eastern half of Oklahoma. Again, I do want to stress the heightened tornado threat area in that brown area, that 5%. There, like I mentioned earlier, there is the potential this could get raised a little bit more, depending on what happens tonight. So if you're in that area tomorrow afternoon and evening, you need to be weather aware, as there is going to be that heightened tornado threat, especially with any storms that stay more discreet in nature, and we'll get to that in just a moment. Now, as we look at the wind risk for tomorrow afternoon and evening, it basically follows the same idea as like the general risk areas. So if you're in the marginal risk, you're in that brown, which is a 5% wind risk, and if you're in the slight risk, you have a 15% wind risk in that yellow. Again, there's going to be storms around, so just be aware. As you would normally expect with severe storms, they're going to pose that wind threat, so that's something to monitor as well. Taking a look at the hail threat, it's a little bit more confined in where the greatest area of concern for hail is, but again, generally eastern Oklahoma, especially when you get to the east and southeast of Tulsa, that is going to be our zone for maybe where we see a little bit more discrete storms. And again, that is going to be our main concern as well as we go through the overnight hours. So now let's take a look at what we can expect when it comes to the timing of these storms and where the biggest threat for these storms are going to be. So this is just one model, but based on everything I've seen, I think this model is handling tonight into tomorrow the best. So that's the one I'm going to show you here. So starting off, obviously right now, very little storm activity across the state. But as we go through the overnight hours tonight, we're going to see that increased threat for some storms across the northern half of the state. This model tries to keep things a little bit more weak and a little bit north of the Oklahoma-Kansas border. That's one thing we're going to have to monitor. The latest model trends I've noticed have actually tried to keep the storms maybe a little bit closer to the Oklahoma-Kansas border. If that's the case, we may see even heightened tornado threat tomorrow. So we'll get to that in just a moment. But again, this is as we go into tomorrow morning. This model has the most intense storms from tomorrow morning across the far northeast corner of the state up toward the Joplin area. So this model may not exactly... This model probably doesn't have the best idea for sure on how tomorrow's going to go. However, this gives you a general idea of when these storms could come through. So for Tulsa, even though this isn't showing many storms for you, if there were to be storms, we're generally looking about during the morning commute tomorrow. So that is one thing to be on the lookout for sure. So now let's talk about the second round of storms. So again, this is still looking at about generally tomorrow morning. But as we see those storms move out of the state, out of northeast Oklahoma, what we're really going to be watching for in the afternoon is the second round of storms, which could be more discrete in nature, which, as we know here in Oklahoma, when storms are more by themselves, that can increase their severity. That can increase the potential of them being more tornadic or producing more hail. That's the thing we're really going to need to be watching tomorrow. As you can see, we're looking at about just after 1 to 2 o'clock tomorrow. This model starts developing storms in central Oklahoma around 2, You can also see it does pop a single cell up in northeast Oklahoma. That's also possible. As we go toward 3 o'clock, it does also begin to kind of start developing stuff. Stuff starts to get going, starts putting itself together, but by 4 o'clock tomorrow, by the mid to late afternoon, that is really when we're going to need to be watching stuff closely. That is when our second round of storms should really get going. This specific model is placing storms in and around Muskogee, Tahlequah, those areas. It may not be exactly where this model is placing it, but this should give you the idea that we should be seeing our second round of storms popping up sometime around the late afternoon, early evening. Those storms continue to develop and move mainly across eastern Oklahoma, kind of around the Fort Smith, Arkansas area, with maybe some additional development into the late evening and overnight hours before storms try to move out of the state. They could also, as you can see here, push their way south into the southeast corner of the state, and that would be through late tomorrow night into early Wednesday. So, again, as I mentioned, we do have the storms coming through tonight. That's round one. And a second round of storms that will try to get going tomorrow afternoon and evening. And again, round two depends on what round one does. If we see less storms tonight into tomorrow, that could cause the storms tomorrow afternoon and evening in round two to be a bit more serious. So we're going to need to watch that very closely. But anyways, that's basically all I have for you when it comes to these storms and the threats for tonight into tomorrow. If we do have any additional updates from the Storm Prediction Center, if they increase the risk at all, I'll be sure to give you the latest information. But that's all I got for you. So thank you so much for watching, and as always, stay weather aware.